Suddenly it turns out that if you put cameras with large solar panels that are very blatantly aimed directly at the street as people drive by, people are a little creeped out by that. Flock, for instance, is a $7.5 billion
Wow.
tech surveillance company,
Okay.
and a lot of their value comes from their access to this data that they're collecting across 80,000 cameras installed across the country.
Okay.
Because we are living in an age now where tech companies are often operating with disregard for law.
What position are you running for?
Oregon House of Representatives, District 7.
Okay. Also known as Springfield.
It is Springfield. The company Palantir that was founded by Peter Thiel.
Peter Thiel's Founders Fund was also first round funding source for Flock.
So
okay.
J.D. Vance, his campaigns were funded by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel founded Palantir, which aggregates just all kinds of surveillance data.
Okay.
And then also his Founders Fund is what founded or helped found Flock. 3 of the Democrats vote yes. 1 Democrat, Senator Broadman out of Bend, his chief of police was in the work group.
Oh.
He voted against. He voted against his chair. He voted against his party. He voted with the 2 Republicans that had just tried to take down some of the protections from sanctuary state laws.
So yeah, this, we had this whole bill process. Senator Broadman really screwed us pretty bad on that. Representative Wise, I have to say, was really a fantastic ally in this. Senator Brzezinski, who started all of this, is willing to commit to, basically put in writing, that he supports the amendment that we want on this. Then it can actually get things moving. And the best that we're able to get from him ever.
It's also weird to see how undemocratic this all is.
Said that the most powerful legislator in the Capitol is Kevin Campbell.
He's a lobbyist. He's not a legislator. The amount of power that this guy has over all of these people is horrifying. I came out of this with horrible realizations. The legislative process is totally corrupted. We do not have a representative government, and there are very, very few leaders in Salem.
I'm James with Community Matters PNW. This is a co-production with cousin Matt, and I am here with Kai and Rob.
Kai Fireside with Eyes Off Eugene.
What position are you running for?
Oregon House of Representatives, District 7.
Okay. Also known as Springfield.
It is Springfield.
For people like me that are kind of interested in politics but not super well informed yet.
And Rob, I was also one of the organizers with Eyes Off Eugene, along with about a half dozen other people.
Okay.
And that was a really good group. And then recently working on some privacy legislation.
Okay. So we'll talk about Eyes Off Eugene, the legislation that you're working on, and anything else that comes up. Make Matt do all the extra work.
Sounds great.
Cousin Matt.
I'm thrilled.
Director, editor, producer.
all around guy.
Would you like to talk about your experience running for office?
Yeah, it's been kind of wild. I didn't really know what to expect. I had just a whole group of volunteers show up and offer to help, and we've kind of been figuring it out as we go along. It's very grassroots. There's no business support. There's no super PAC support. It is just community top to bottom.
Okay. What made you decide to run for office?
Our current representative, John Lively, is retiring.
Okay.
But I previously worked with him on a couple of different issues, Flock most recently, but prior to that, some housing issues. But he was always super available, and his staff was super helpful, and his staff is the reason that I found out that when you email a legislator, they actually get the memo. Doesn't just go off into the ether and sit in an inbox like somebody
wow.
reads it.
Okay.
So when I found out he was retiring, I figured the best way to continue doing the work that we were doing would be to step into his shoes.
Okay, so I interviewed you. I've got like 3 or 4 interviews on my channel that we chunked up, and we talked about several subjects. In this one specifically, the primary topic is going to be legislation and how a bill passes, how it gets started, the process that it goes through.
Yeah, so we can start at the end
Okay.
and then work our way back from there.
Okay.
So this piece of legislation ended up being Senate Bill 1516.
1516.
And that was just passed today by the House on the House floor. So
Okay.
it's on its way now to the governor's desk for a signature. It did not go the way that we wanted. So
Okay.
we're not endorsing the bill, but we can at least talk about the process that got us there. Rewinding back, what is it, a few months now?
I would say, yeah, November, the Judiciary Committee meeting.
Yeah, so we were, because of the Eyes Off Eugene work, there was an invitation to do a presentation in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee
Okay.
on ALPRs.
What's
Basically,
ALPR?
yeah, automated license plate reader. So
Okay.
a lot of people here heard about Flock recently. Some may still not have heard about it. The short of that story is that a tech company signed a contract with the Eugene Police Department, kind of without talking to the city council first or a lot of other city leadership, and then subsequently deployed. What did we have at best count?
25 in Springfield and 57 in Eugene.
Cameras?
Thank you. Yeah. These are basically
Okay.
surveillance traffic cameras. A lot of popular intersections and elsewhere around the city. And all of that data went directly to this company rather than directly to local law enforcement. And it came with a lot of AI-powered software then that allowed officers to search through the data feed for the last 30 days for vehicle descriptions and then see everywhere that vehicle had been spotted by the devices. In isolation, 1 or 2 of these maybe doesn't collect a whole lot of data necessarily. It's not exactly a privacy nightmare. It's still not great. A lot of people don't like it. They're very reasonable people. But when you deploy 50 or more of those in an area like this, you get a lot of information about where people go and what their habits are.
The company bills this as pattern of life.
Yeah, so
Wow.
they have a term of art called a pattern of life search, and we were able to obtain training materials and some other things from the company that describe how someone might be able to use the data in the search interface to, for instance, make a reasonable prediction about where somebody might be on a given day of the week at a given time. Because you see, for instance, somebody goes to the same lunch spot every Friday at noon, the devices are able to pick that up. And if they wanted to then apprehend that person for any reason, then they know where to find them.
But you can also use that to see what religious institutions someone is visiting on a weekly basis.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You might be able to figure out where they're getting medical care, figure out where they work, or who they're visiting with, or who's been to the federal building.
Okay.
So we had found out about this in June of last year. And I have a tech background, and I knew a little bit about the company before they actually showed up here. And I also understand how data works and what tech companies do with it and how they think about data.
Yeah.
And so I thought this was a pretty bad system to have here. So on June 23rd, I spoke to a city council meeting for the very first time in my life.
And this is in Eugene or Springfield?
In Eugene.
Okay.
And no political experience or anything like that prior. Vote religiously, but hadn't really, gotten involved in the process otherwise.
Okay.
And then that whole thing quickly turned into Eyes Off Eugene. We worked with a couple of really wonderful people that all had the same concerns, and we were able to run a campaign, just figuring it out as we went along, that ultimately convinced both cities, Eugene and Springfield, and then later on Lane County as well, to cancel their contracts with that company. And then as a consequence of that, we went to the Senate Judiciary Committee to present on ALPRs.
We got a phone call one night from Senator Przonsky himself
Okay.
inviting us to give this presentation
Okay.
in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee in
Wow.
November.
Okay.
So that was just, it's called an informational hearing, and people just come up
Okay.
and they kind of understood that this was like becoming a hot topic.
It is.
So they wanted what they perceived as like the community experts on it to come and give a presentation. So we did.
And then that pretty quickly became an invitation for one person to participate in a work group along with some others led by Senator Przonsky. And then that work group would ultimately develop this legislation, which became SB 1516. And then you spent a lot more time up there than I did, but how many days do you think you spent up at the Capitol all in during this?
I don't want to think about it. Gas money. I don't even want to think about it.
I think realistically it was just about a solid month
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
worth of, four
Okay.
like full working weeks up and back to the Capitol. You got to know basically a lot of the a lot of the representatives, a lot of the senators, depending on which stage the bill was in. I went with you to the Capitol for the first time a couple of weeks into it, and it was weird to see people like actual legislators just being like, "Oh, hey, Kai." And
Did you feel famous?
Felt weird. Walk by an office and staff would be like, "Hey, I loved your testimony. Thank you."
we had a good bill for a minute
Okay.
at 2:30 p.m. on Monday, February 16th. We had a good bill, and that bill included a number of provisions for citizen oversight. It also included a key part called end-to-end encryption. It was going to require ALPR companies, these surveillance technology companies, to implement a technological control that would ensure that they could not access the data.
Mhm.
They could manage the data, they could store it,
Okay.
they could handle it for law enforcement agencies. They could help law enforcement agencies share it with other law enforcement agencies as needed. They can facilitate all of that, but end-to-end encryption would prevent them from being able to take that surveillance information and share it without authorization, which is something that they had been doing.
They had.
They had.
They got caught
Repeatedly.
doing this last year. I mean, all over the place, but
Okay.
in Eugene, I mean, over 100 times where this data was being shared directly with federal agencies who were using it for immigration. We told them that this was a possibility really early on, and they did not believe us, and then it happened. You can't just write a law that compels the vendors not to access the data, because ICE or any federal agency can issue either an administrative subpoena or a judicial warrant
Okay.
compelling them to provide the data. You can't write a law that says don't abide by a warrant or something.
Yeah.
There's like a supremacy clause. So if the feds ask for it, you have to give it to them.
And supremacy means that, like, for example, a federal agency has authority over like a local agency, right?
There's exceptions, but
Yeah.
essentially yes.
Okay, just a basic idea.
Yeah,
Uh,
basically if the state and the feds are disagreeing on something, typically the feds get to
Get their way.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
The other reason that you can't just write a law that tells a tech company no is because we are living in an age now where tech companies are often operating with disregard for law, and especially on a scale like this. Perhaps if it was a federal law with real teeth, they might actually abide by it. But especially at a local level, the tech company has, and they pay people a lot of money to figure out how to work around little nuisances like local regulations. They're very good at it, and they've been doing it for a long time. We needed to have something in the law that required them to implement a technical control that would actually keep their hands off of this information.
Okay.
And at 4:30 p.m. on that day, a new amendment suddenly surfaced out of this committee. We still don't know who wrote it. That stripped that out. They left a bunch of other stuff in, but it stripped out that one sentence, that one requirement.
It's still required end-to-end encryption, but they took out the definition of it.
Okay.
Which is the main enforcement mechanism.
Yeah.
If there's not a legal definition, these companies will argue that these other forms of encryption that they're using count as end-to-end encryption. And they've been doing that.
Okay.
So we knew they were going to try and do that because in the work group,
Okay.
they were trying to edit what we wrote as the definition.
Yeah, ultimately we ended up going up against a couple of billion-dollar companies, and they had a very powerful law enforcement lobbyist, Kevin Campbell,
Wow.
running interference for them and defending them. And
That was going to be my next
yeah.
question: is if this had to do with money?
Oh yeah,
It's
Okay.
not even just the money though, because the money that is changing hands is such small amounts. If you look at
Okay.
the PACs that donate to political campaigns,
Okay.
I mean, it's like a 4-digit number. It's not that much. It's $1,500 or $1,000.
Hmm.
I think it is more just the power of the law enforcement lobby. Politicians are terrified of upsetting that demographic or being called, soft on crime.
Yeah.
and
Okay.
whereas it was relatively small amounts of money perhaps involved in the lobbyist part of it, there was a lot of money involved in the tech company part of it.
Okay.
So Flock, for instance, is a $7.5 billion
Wow.
tech surveillance company,
Okay.
and a lot of their value comes from their access to this data that they're collecting across 80,000 cameras installed across the country.
Okay.
So if you force them to give up their access to that data, then they're worth a lot less money, and they know it.
So in a way, our private life is kind of becoming like a profit-making commodity. I mean, it's kind of how I'm looking at it. I mean, whoa.
Yeah, information about you is aggregated and commoditized.
Wow.
A lot of people, you hear this a lot. I've been, talking to people on topics like this for a long time now, and the most common response on any of the data brokering economy is, well, what is my data worth anyway? Like, who cares when I go to the drugstore, right? Or which drugstore I go to. But people do care. That is worth money, and they are getting that information often in ways that you aren't aware of. So, for instance, if you have a number of apps installed on your smartphone, a lot of them are part of this data brokering economy where the apps are collecting information on your movements and your habits in the background, even if you're not using the app at the time.
Wow.
And they make that available for sale.
Yeah.
And in aggregate, other companies learn a lot more about people's habits. So this is just another kind of piece of this whole surveillance issue.
It doesn't sound like this is going to go away anytime soon. I mean, if anything, things are ramping up when it comes.
I don't know. We had a big win against Flock. I think that's kind of a sign of the times because all of this data, I mean, it's not just that private companies have it, it's that they're funneling it to the feds also. And people are particularly sensitive to that now. So there's a community that is actually interested in surveillance that's not just tech people.
Block really seems to have crossed some kind of invisible line because this
Okay.
is the first time in 30 years, in my experience, that people generally are talking about the topic of surveillance and seem to be developing real concerns. Suddenly, it turns out that if you put cameras with large solar panels that are very blatantly aimed directly at the street as people drive by. People are a little creeped out by that,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
And so, an app on your phone, and if you're not aware of everything else that's going on, it can happen, and most people will sort of shrug. But if I put a camera on a pole and aim it right at your driveway, you probably feel a different way about that.
Okay.
I think more people care about this than the NSA whistleblower. Yeah, I don't know if it's just because people can see it or.
Yeah, that might be because it's tangible, right? I mean, it's right there. You can see the video camera pointing right at you.
Yeah.
And it's different times too. Like a lot of people feel pretty threatened right now. They have perfectly reasonable concerns that kind of data might put them at real risk.
There are so many already vulnerable communities that are under attack by the federal government that are being targeted. This is exactly the kind of surveillance that will be used against those communities. That's what ICE was doing. One of the things that they were using this for was locating what they called target-rich environments.
Yep.
Okay.
Which means like a location where there's a dense population of immigrants.
This was our first experience diving into the political machine, right?
Oh, okay.
And so you hear from the outside, everybody has this like picture of politics. Of course, politicians are all a little bit corrupt and slimy and blah, blah, blah. But you actually go in and you meet with them and they like tell you one thing and then hours later do a different thing.
The company Palantir that was founded by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is obviously involved in picking who gets to be in the high Republican positions.
That's what they're saying.
Peter Thiel was the co-founder of PayPal with Elon Musk.
Right.
He's South African. He's one of the tech bros. I asked somebody one time. I said, do you know what JD stands for in JD Vance? And they said, no. What? I said, Peter Thiel.
Yeah. Peter
He
Thiel.
completely funded JD Vance's run for Senate and everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Peter Thiel's Founders Fund was also first round funding source for Flock.
So JD Vance, his campaigns were funded by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel founded Palantir, which aggregates just all kinds of surveillance data.
Okay.
And then also his Founders Fund is what founded or helped found Flock. So he's really got his fingers in a lot of this, and he's got kind of some personal benefit to seeing Flock succeed.
Wow, Flock, Palantir, JD Vance, Elon Musk. That's
Project 2025, courtesy Arvin.
okay. Wow.
Yeah, let me get out the board and the strings and the
Yeah.
Except it's just one string. It's Peter Thiel and Flock.
Yeah, to be clear, Flock started out as a Y Combinator startup, and so that was their seed.
What?
Y Combinator is the name of the startup accelerator. So they went through their seed stage through that program.
Okay.
And Y Combinator
Has done
helps
a ton of tech companies.
Yeah, they help certain kinds of companies though. They have sort of a niche.
Anything that can grow really aggressively. The thing that they look for most of all is a company that is willing to grow as fast as possible and completely work around any regulations or barriers in its way.
Okay.
So, for instance, DoorDash and Grubhub and Dropbox and some other services you've heard of are all Y Combinator startups.
Okay.
But it's that growth strategy that makes a Y Combinator startup a Y Combinator startup. And so they went through their seed stage with that, and they got hooked up with a lot of resources that way. And then they went through a series of funding rounds after that. And one of the first ones there was Founders Fund, which is Peter Thiel's fund, just by way of exposition.
The Dow. The Dow is over 50,000.
Not anymore, it's not. I don't know why you're laughing.
Sorry. So you're talking about some of the personalities, some of the politicians, some of the frustrations that you had going through this process up at the Capitol.
We should start at the work group.
Okay.
We should start by explaining who was in the work group, because I think that's important.
The work group up at State Congress?
Senator Przanski started this work group that was supposed to come together and find some legislation that was going to regulate license plate readers. That was
Okay.
He said that he wanted continuity across the state for contracts that they were entering in with public agencies.
Okay.
And so this work group was Senator Przanski, Senator Campos, and Representative Wise,
Okay.
along with Commander of Oregon State Police, Rebecca David, Chief of Police for Bend, Mike Krantz,
Oh.
random police lobbyist, Kevin Campbell.
Huh.
I don't know why there was a lobbyist in the work group. I think that was the first mistake,
Yeah.
and it became an issue the entire time. There was a representative from ACLU, one of their national policy people. And then we had to decide which one of us would be there.
And everybody likes Kai, so Kai got to be in there, and
All these other people involved, and
it was
you
just one of
both
us.
couldn't have been there.
Right.
Right.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we're outnumbered 3-1, law enforcement to community activists. We also happen to be the only people in this work group that were not, on the clock collecting a paycheck.
Wow.
You know.
Oh, yeah, non-professionals there.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
The ACLU guy, at least he's, employed by them, but everybody else is getting paid by somebody.
Who got to pick who was involved with this?
The senator.
The senator.
Yeah, it's his work group. He
Which
convened
senator?
it. Senator Przanski.
Okay.
He's Springfield and part of Eugene.
Yeah, and is chair of the Senate Justice Committee, so Judiciary Committee, sorry.
Okay.
And so
Judiciary Committee. So at state level has judiciary too.
Yeah.
So basically,
okay.
he deals most of all with legislation around law enforcement.
Okay.
He's a former prosecutor. A lot of legislators are former prosecutors.
Okay.
I don't know why that's a pathway into that, but I mean,
Yeah.
disproportionately.
Like, there's a political component to thinking about surveillance, absolutely. But we were not, as an organization, we were not political, we were not partisan.
The Fourth Amendment is not a left or right issue.
Okay.
Privacy is for everybody.
Yeah.
And we really tried to avoid picking a fight with law enforcement also. We did not see, law enforcement as being really the problem here. The root cause of the problem was the surveillance tech that they were using.
Okay.
Those were all choices that we talked about, and there were a wide range of opinions on all of that within Eyes Off Eugene, but that's what we did publicly. And so we took a lot of that into this work group, and we did not start out with any kind of adversarial relationship with the law enforcement representatives there. So yeah, and unfortunately, what happened in actuality in the work group is Kevin Campbell especially and Rebecca David both started to take the things we were working on in the work group back to ALPR companies and say, hey, are you guys okay with this?
Oh
What do
my
you guys think
gosh.
about this?
And
Really?
Yeah.
early on, they had offered to the senator to bring representatives from these companies in. And he was very explicit that he did not want vendors in the conversation because he didn't want somebody there trying to sell us something.
Wow.
Yeah. So ultimately, we ended up having to have all of these arguments in the work group. I came to think of it almost like trench warfare with law enforcement on one side of concerns, civil liberties on the other, and then also the ALPR companies themselves. And that was grueling. And ultimately, what came out of that was a bill that mostly the ALPR companies had given Senator Przanski permission to submit, with the exception of the one point that we had put the most energy into trying to get.
We worked on things like data retention periods, how public records requests would be handled, data sharing, whether you need a warrant, whether you can send the data out of state, what kinds of crimes you can use to justify use of the system, auditing requirements. All of that stuff was okay, but ultimately the best thing was going to be to keep the data out of the hands of vendors. That is the most important thing because that is the group most likely to abuse that data.
And ACLU, to their credit, they put up a heck of a good fight also. They, law enforcement wanted 6 months of data retention, which means that any law enforcement officer would be able to use a FLOC or an ALPR system and pull up 6 months of information on somebody's movements.
Other states have, 21 days.
Oh, okay.
There's states with 3 days. There's a state that only allows it for a couple minutes. What we came in and proposed was that they only hold on to data that was already associated with a vehicle on one of their hot lists. So if it's a stolen car or it's an Amber Alert, they shut that down right away.
And so ultimately we ended up at 30 days of data retention. ACLU worked really hard to try to get less than that. And the law enforcement representatives just did not want to cooperate there.
And 30 days is what Flock was using as their standard anyway, so we didn't gain any safeguards there. We didn't improve that at all.
Yeah, so that was a work group. We had some pretty intense debates back and forth, and it became increasingly frustrating to have to parry these ALPR companies on legislation. It's a lot like, asking the tobacco companies what they think the warning label should read on the cigarette carton.
So these vendors, it's not just that they are approaching a problem with a different, with a different motivation than we are.
Yeah, different set of priorities.
Yeah, but it's not just that. It's that they kept not arguing in good faith. I mean, frankly, they would blatantly lie. So they would tell the state police commander something in an email that was false. And then she would bring that to the work group, and the legislators are left having to decide if they trust the commander of the state police on her word, or if they trust some random citizen that they met 2 months ago. It's such a weak sounding argument to just say, hey, that's false. And because so many of these things are so technical, legislators just don't get it, and they're not particularly interested in learning it.
Yeah, and then it would spiral into, in some cases, some fairly technical topics. And I was far and away the most technical person directly, kind of involved in that. And even then, if you're dealing with, these technical topics, ultimately the legislator is still not sure who to believe on that. So you get Rebecca David comes back and says, well, Axon says they can't do this. It would be super expensive. And I explain, no, it's something that other software companies do routinely. The legislator is left in the middle going, well, is it hard or not? Are we asking too much of the company or not?
Because one factor that we had to consider the whole time is in the state of Oregon, we're not allowed to make legislation in even numbered years that is going to cost money.
Okay.
I know
the budget set up?
That's the budget setup. Our budgets are on 2-year cycles, and so we can only spend money in odd numbered years.
Okay.
So we have a 2-year budget that we make.
Okay.
And the idea of the short session, which is the 35 days in even numbered years that the legislators meet, was originally supposed to be just for minor budget corrections and like emergency legislation. But it has grown into, hey, do whatever you want to get pushed through as long as it doesn't cost money. So anything that we did, if it sounded like it was going to come at high cost to the vendor, and the vendor would then pass that cost on to their customer, the state police, then it gets counted as having a fiscal, and we can't do that. Okay. It would kill the whole bill. So this whole time we are having to explain why it's not impossible to do the things that we're asking for. It's not super expensive to do the things that we're asking for. These people have engineers on staff. It's not like they have to hire new engineers. They've got them.
From the work group, we got a potential bill, and we were still wrestling that bill down to the floor, right down to the very last minute. We had multiple post-work group conversations with different stakeholders and everything. And for a minute, it looked like we had a pretty good bill. Okay. And then the politics really started.
The Senate Judiciary Committee passed the version of the bill that did not have the definition of end-to-end encryption in it.
Okay.
But from there, it was headed to the Senate floor. And then it was supposed to go to the House Judiciary Committee because it passes one chamber and it goes to the equivalent committee in the other chamber.
Okay.
But because it's the short session and things are weird, and it passed kind of later in the short session, instead of going to the House Judiciary Committee, it went to the House Rules Committee, which is where bills go when they miss some kind of timeline. I know.
Okay.
So when we thought it was going to the House Judiciary Committee, we were talking to people who sit on the House Judiciary Committee to ask them to put the amendment back in, to make an amendment that puts the definition back in, because they are allowed to amend a bill. It would then go back to the Senate Judiciary Committee for a concurrence vote.
Sounds like a bit of a clusterfuck.
Well, you got that right.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it'll ping pong back and forth, and then the original committee has to approve the amendment also.
Okay.
So we were talking with all these people who are on the House Judiciary Committee.
Okay.
And we're, doing okay. And then we find out that it's actually going to the House Rules Committee.
You don't think that was like a deliberate form of distraction, do you? Do you think it was?
No.
It could have been.
I mean,
It could have been strategic.
It could have been.
It could have been.
I'm not convinced it wasn't.
actually,
Okay.
we kind of missed a step here. So the bill goes and it's ready to be voted on in the Senate Judiciary Committee,
Okay.
which is 6 people, 4 Democrats and 2 Republicans.
Okay.
So, it's a Democratic Senate chair that authored this bill. It's he's sponsoring it.
Senator Brzezowski's, yeah.
Okay.
So we all give our testimony, and originally he has them all vote on the version that has the definition in it.
Okay.
3 of the Democrats vote yes. 1 Democrat, Senator Broadman out of Bend, his chief of police was in the work group.
Oh.
He voted against. He voted against his chair. He voted against his party. He voted with the 2 Republicans that had just tried to take down some of the protections from sanctuary state laws.
Okay.
So he voted with the Republicans and he killed the version of the bill that had the definition in it. Then they all voted on the version without the definition. It passed unanimously.
Okay.
I don't think a single person on there understood what having the definition in this bill meant.
Okay.
They were not interested in understanding what that meant. They just understood that law enforcement said it was bad. And the only reason law enforcement said it was bad is because the vendors told them it was bad, not because they understood either.
So it came
Right.
down to the definition of the end-to-end encryption.
Yeah.
Explain this to me like you would to a 12-year-old. What are the consequences of this?
What these vendors will do if there's no definition is they will use some other kind of encryption. For example, what a lot of them are doing is encryption in transit plus encryption at rest. So you have the camera, it takes the picture.
Okay.
It encrypts the data.
Yeah.
It sends the data that is encrypted over the network to
Okay.
the server.
Okay.
There it is decrypted and encrypted again in a different way. That's encryption at rest. So it's sitting on the server encrypted.
Okay.
But in that moment, on that node, it is temporarily decrypted. The vendors have full access to it.
Oh, wow.
End-to-end encryption would be the camera takes the picture, encrypts it, it goes, it sits,
Okay.
and it is not decrypted until it goes back onto some law enforcement agency's laptop or
Okay.
whatever they're using.
So the way it stands now, then the way they changed it, it's the encryption process is interrupted so that it's not encrypted for that time.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, the definition we put in there was not a technical definition.
Okay.
What the definition actually did, it wasn't technical at all. What it did is it was a single sentence that said that only the law enforcement agency that owned the captured license plate data would have the capability to decrypt access or grant access to that data.
Okay.
That is almost verbatim what it said. And the important part there's a couple of pieces, but capability is an important word there. And then the decrypt access or grant access. Basically, this means that only the law enforcement agency has the technological ability to do those functions with the data, and it forbids the vendor from having the ability to do that. And so that's what we went with, because there was a lot of friction in the work group around getting too technical in the language for it, which was reasonable. But what the vendors preserved for themselves was their ability to decrypt access or grant access to the data. That's what they wanted from the very beginning. Basically, it amounts to preserving for themselves the ability to commercialize, monetize, or share that data with third parties at any time.
Okay.
And they can do that, by the way, without the law enforcement agencies, local law enforcement agencies, even knowing that they're doing it.
They got caught doing that last year too, sharing data without telling the data owner.
They being
Flock in this case, yeah.
Okay. This is going on all over the country too. I just realized I looked into it a little bit, and there are like cities and all over the states all over the country. So this isn't just an Oregon issue. This isn't just a Springfield, Eugene issue. This is
emerging technology.
Yeah.
But it's an issue in sanctuary states.
Okay.
You know, Alabama does not care. Texas does not care.
Okay.
But here, law enforcement is prohibited from assisting federal agencies with immigration enforcement.
Okay.
So then, is collecting this data and not keeping track of it helping immigration enforcement?
But eventually, this is, I mean, technology has been weaponized against political opponents by the current Trump administration. I mean, this is right now, it's not, you know, an issue with ICE in non-sanctuary cities, but it's a weapon that can be pointed at anybody that has access to this power.
Yeah.
Eventually.
There's been prior reporting of ALPR data being used to find the patterns of movement and locations, and ultimately the identities of political protesters. So not people who were
really
that happened in Medford. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Not people who are accused of a crime, mind you.
Okay.
Not part of an active criminal investigation.
Literally progressive activists. That's who they were targeting.
Okay.
To be clear, these are so far isolated cases, but there's no reason to expect it'll stay that way. There's a crowdsourced site called deflock.me, which allows users to kind of like submit the locations of cameras that they've seen around their area. So you get this crowdsourced map. And it's run by some guy for no money.
This is nationwide?
Yeah, national map.
Okay.
And Garrett Langley, CEO of Flock, recently came out and referred to the person running deflock.me as a terrorist.
Wow.
Which, you know, maybe 10 years ago, you would just shrug at a CEO saying dumb things. CEOs are allowed to say dumb things.
Yeah.
But these days, the political environment is a little bit tense.
It is.
And some people are, you know, being referred to as terrorists and potentially being set up for real consequences in the future.
Yeah. And the lines between CEOs and the current admin and politics in general is
blurry.
Blurred map now more than I've ever known.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's horrifying.
So yeah, this, you know, we had this whole bill process. Senator Broadman really screwed us pretty bad on that.
Okay.
And so then we started working really hard on fixing it. And that was where a lot of the meetings came in. There was an opportunity to fix it, and we worked really hard on that. We poured basically full time for a couple of weeks into this. Representative Wise, I have to say, was really a fantastic ally in this.
Okay.
He ultimately was the one person that we had talked to throughout this process that had the courage to go ahead and actually submit an amendment that would have fixed this problem in the bill. Restore the bill to what it was supposed to have been to begin with.
Yeah, for the Rules Committee to pass it with the definition in, somebody has to suggest an amendment. And usually that comes from the committee that the bill is in, but it can come from anybody. And because he was in the work group, it's pretty legitimate for it to come from him.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it also risks pissing off some of his cohort.
Yeah, but he stuck his neck out and did that for us after we had described the issues with the bill with him, and then we needed to work on the House Rules Committee, and we met with basically everyone in it, some of them multiple times.
Okay.
Representative Kropp was also from Bend.
Okay.
Bend is really pivotal in this legislation, in this story.
Okay.
Kropp is the one who recently intimidated the
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
Representative Tran. Yes, yeah,
For the gun bill.
yep, and that
Did you hear about this?
that was going on right in the
Okay,
middle of
so-
all this.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So Kropp is chair of House Judiciary. He sits on some other committees,
Okay.
but there was a vote on some gun legislation. And-
okay.
A Democrat had voted no,
Yeah,
and he paused the committee hearing,
Okay.
pulled her out into the hall, and she came back in crying and changed her vote to yes.
Really?
Mhm.
Is
he,
this
he made them re-vote. So Kropp is chair of the House Judiciary Committee, which
Okay.
means when this bill was headed there, he was the one that we needed to talk to because he's the one that gets to decide if the amendment that we want gets voted on at all. When this got moved to rules instead, the chair becomes Representative Bowman,
okay?
who is also the House Majority Leader.
Okay.
So we meet with his staff. Hey, we want this amendment. We want it voted on. And he doesn't really have an opinion on it. And he sends us to go talk to Kropp, who is just a member of this committee, not the chair, not the vice chair. And I think the reason for that is some kind of deference because Kropp was supposed to be chair if it went to the committee it was supposed to go to originally. I don't know if that was just some kind of weird capital etiquette.
Okay.
But, dude, make a decision for yourself. You're the fucking chair and the House Majority Leader.
Kropp essentially ducked us, dodged us, and refused to talk with us at any time.
So Kropp ends up being this linchpin for no reason. Everybody is just deferring to him.
we talked to repeatedly over half a dozen other representatives that are all associated with this, and ultimately everybody is telling us you got to go talk with Kropp, which he won't do. He won't talk to us.
I did get one meeting with him pretty early on,
Okay.
back when this was supposed to be a House Judiciary bill. And his response boiled down to, well, what did the police say?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so Kropp is deferring to his chief of police in Bend, which is Mike Krantz, who is also in the work group, and Mike Krantz is deferring to Axon, an
Or
ALPR
Clark.
vendor.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the executive branch has all of this influence on the legislative branch, which I think is a little weird.
Yeah.
And so we go through this whole circus for quite a while. And throughout this process, by the way, we're told by multiple people that if Senator Brzezinski, who started all of this,
Okay.
is willing to commit to, basically put in writing that he supports the amendment that we want on this, then it can actually get things moving. And the best that we're able to get from him ever is a verbal, yeah, absolutely, of course I support that, but it never ends up in writing.
Interesting.
And so as a result, that gives everybody else cover to do the thing that they wanted to do in the first place, which is enact legislation that they were given permission by ALPR vendors
It's
to enact.
it's also weird to see how undemocratic this all is.
Yeah.
Everybody does not have an equal vote here. There are concentrations of power.
Okay. Yeah, they're supposed to be representing us.
This is not a representative.
We're supposed to be the ones in control.
Yeah, no.
There
So-
was, during some of the conversations, overheard somebody, not a legislator, but somebody there at the Capitol, that's paid to be there at the Capitol,
Oh, okay.
said that the most powerful legislator in the Capitol is Kevin Campbell.
He's a
Okay.
lobbyist. He's not a legislator, but he is.
Oh, yeah, the lobbyist.
Yeah, the
He's
lobbyist
the
for
most powerful legislator.
Yeah,
Oregon
the
Association
lobbyist.
of Chiefs of Police.
yeah. The amount of power that this guy has over all of these people is horrifying.
We were having a last minute hallway chat with a couple of people that were about to vote on this in the House Rules Committee. And Kevin Campbell walks right up, interrupts the meeting, and then starts to weigh in on technical parts of it that, we were just in the middle of discussing. This guy has no technical background.
Again, we're back to, he's saying things that are blatantly false.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's lying.
He's lying. Whether he knows it or not, he's lying.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's either a colossal moron or he's a dishonest prick. He might be
A little
both.
bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, not our favorite person. But, also during this meeting with a couple of legislators, he just pulls one of them away and walks off down the hall with them.
Yeah.
During the meeting that we were having with them in the hallway, he has complete access to all of these legislators at any time.
Mhm.
And whatever it is that he says he wants as a representative for the Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police is more than likely how the legislator is going to vote.
Okay.
And we brought in a ton of people to testify during the hearing in front of the House Rules Committee. We had people online, we had people in there, got over 200 people to testify in writing.
Okay.
I mean, the number of just voters, of regular people, constituents that are telling these guys, hey, the definition is important. A bunch of them were cybersecurity professionals, web developers, people who work professionally in this industry and are not being compensated for being there or sharing their time.
Okay.
And they're telling these legislators how important this is, and it didn't matter.
Yeah. Throughout this entire process, you had over a dozen people that are active in information security and cybersecurity.
Okay.
Whether that's penetration testing or defensive security or management roles, whatever. But they are active in this part of the industry, very security conscious. They understand technology super well. Every single one of them is saying, you have to have this in there.
Okay.
And that had absolutely no weight against the lobbyist. No influence against the lobbyist.
Never mind the fact that Off Eugene has done a bunch of the original research on Flock, took apart 7 of these cameras, reverse engineered.
Okay. All right. Not that I'd be opposed to the alternative. That would be a good story too.
Yes, but we certainly wouldn't say that on camera.
No. We disavow everything.
Reverse engineered the code that it runs on.
Okay.
They were the ones that found out that, in fact, they are tracking pedestrians and bicyclists. It's not just cars. But, I mean, if there is an expert around on this stuff, it's people from Off Eugene who went and testified.
Yeah.
And I ended up thinking later, because we had 30 people testify that we needed this amendment. And I was wondering if there was a critical mass number. Is there a point where I could have had enough people there that it would have mattered? Because instead of our 3 minutes to testify that we're supposed to have, they cut us down to 1 because we had so many people.
Minute.
Yeah.
Because we had so many people that were there talking about it.
But also 1 minute to offer any kind of informed opinion on this to a number of legislators that in several cases admitted that they didn't know anything about the bill, just short hours prior.
Do you feel like this was, to a degree, like a smoke and mirrors?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, what I came to learn through the process is that they, we all have this idea of politics being a little bit slimy, a little bit sleazy, a little bit dishonest. And everybody just assumes, politician, you're soulless. You have to be.
Yeah.
And of course you're a little bit dishonest, but there's a particular flavor to the dishonesty that was a new experience for me, where they practice this art of either them or their staffers telling you whatever you need to hear to be placated, whatever you need to hear to feel like, okay, yes, they heard you and they are considering doing what you want them to do.
Okay.
When in reality, that's not going to happen at all.
In reality, it came down more or less to the lobbyist power and money.
Right.
And so ultimately it came down to Representative Kropp telling Representative Bowman to not even bring the amendment with the definition to a vote, and so they didn't vote on it. They just passed it through as it was.
Yeah. And to be clear, another aspect of this is that was a 6-person vote, and they could have, some number of them could have made a totally safe no vote on it.
Okay.
Just as a statement for their own constituents. Representative Graber, we had talked with her just shortly before this. She'd been reviewing it. She had the opportunity to put a no vote on it, and it still would have passed, and it would have cost her nothing.
She seemed like the only person that actually understood that we were worried about this harming people. It's not like we want it this way just because we want it this way.
Yeah.
Or, we don't want it this way just to win. Like, there are
It's
real
the consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was the only one that seemed like she kind of understood that.
Mm.
Even Representative Scarlatos, who routinely votes no on everything just to vote no, he voted yes on it.
Really?
Yeah.
And I could not understand. I had a little interaction with Kevin Campbell just immediately before the vote, and he was in a very good mood. And he and I hadn't been getting along. We'd had words outside the hallway a little bit and that sort of thing. I have a very low tolerance for dishonest people.
Did you call him on he's lying?
I'm sorry?
Did you call him on he's lying?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in front of a couple of people.
Okay.
I gotta, hey, calm down.
Really?
Yeah.
For what it's worth, I did the same thing. I was talking to 2 representatives,
Okay.
and he came up and started just spewing bullshit. And when I said that's not true, I got told that I was being too emotional.
Oh, wow.
Right. Oh, that again. Yes. Yeah.
I'm too emotional about encryption.
Yeah, so, ultimately he had got everybody to vote the way that he wanted, even the people that could have very comfortably voted no. And it was just a terribly frustrating process to go through. We ended up with SB 1516 being a really crippled bill that was indirectly manipulated by ALPR vendors. And we have more work to do.
I will say, on the House floor, Representative Chaichi, who is a fellow Democratic Socialist, did vote against it.
Really?
Appreciate her.
Yeah, there were a few genuinely good people in all of this. Rep Wise always did what he said he would do for us. We could, if we met with him and we asked for something, he wouldn't necessarily do it, but then he wouldn't tell us he was going to do it and then not do it.
Yeah, like he made it clear where his boundaries were.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he stuck his neck out for us. And and then if we could have just got a little bit more support from Przonski, or if we had been able to, in some way counter simultaneously these multi-billion-dollar tech companies and the Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police, that's like final boss fight.
Yeah.
For a couple of newbie, lobbyists.
Yeah.
We had to register as lobbyists.
Really?
If you spend a certain amount of time in the Capitol trying to get people to vote a certain way, you have to register as a lobbyist.
Where do we line up to get that paycheck from George Soros?
Yeah, right.
Sweet paycheck.
You haven't got yours yet?
I came out of this with like horrible realizations. The legislative process is totally corrupted. We do not have a representative government, and there are very, very few leaders in Salem.
What we need now, most of all, and I'm not just trying to boost your campaign here, but really, I genuinely believe what we need most of all right now is for more people that are passionate about this to step up and get involved. We need far fewer pro-surveillance Democrats representing us, and
Corporate Democrats.
Yes.
And there are a lot of people out there that are politically involved at the local level. Please, keep working on that. Let's get some more people to get involved also, and see if we can start to do some good. Consistently, the people that actually did that we actually had the best interactions with were the younger legislators.
John Lively did a
with
lot for
with the
us.
with
Okay.
the exception of John
No,
Lively.
legitimately, not like just because he's
Yeah.
our rep, but like he would take a meeting with me at any time. He
Okay.
would talk to other legislators, because if I talk to a legislator, it kind of means whatever another legislator talks to a legislator, it holds more weight.
Okay.
Maybe it shouldn't be that way, but it is that way.
Our thing on this is surveillance technology. We're trying to rein that in before it gets completely out of control and completely impossible to roll back. We're not at that point yet. We can still roll this back.
Okay.
We can still live in a freer society. A lot of other issues going on right now, whether your passion is housing or agriculture or the environment or mental health or healthcare or education or any of these other things, you are going to come up against a lot of the same interests, moneyed interests, lobbyists,
Yeah.
the entire political machine. And if you are passionate enough about these topics to try to carry them up to the Capitol and try to effect some change there, you're going to need support from people around you.
This was not just the two of us doing this.
No.
We're kind of like the face of it, but there are so many other people behind this that just don't want to be in the media or don't want to be named.
Okay.
This, at no point ever was it just the two of us working on this.
And that was the case with Eyes Off Eugene too. We met some really wonderful people through that, and there were a number of people that worked really hard to get those contracts canceled, and they all had their specializations. And I would love to give them a shout out, but I don't know if that's what they want.
Okay. No,
I
that
know
makes
that that's
sense.
not what they want.
It takes multiple levels. It takes multiple roles.
Yeah.
For movement.
Just that they are, coming from it, coming at it from a different angle where they've got values or they've got things
Hey,
that
Rob.
they want. Does not want to be locked in the bedroom.
At this point, I mean, like, whatever it's going to be, like, it's your dog. Like, fine. If she has to be out, then she has to be out.
Oh, really?
You don't even know with you.
This is our guest speaker, Hazard.
Time during the process, we finally got
You're a terrorist.
Can we put you on that?
I think the blooper reel is going to be great. That'll
Yeah, that'd
the
be fun.
blooper reel is going to get more views than any of the rest of it. Like, let's be real.
Make sure the paper real to now.